Welcome to Exit Poll Left. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Exit Poll Left. We are on episode 3. Yeah. I'm your host, Jenny Floyd.
And I'm your co-host, Cristal Figueroa.
And today we're going to be covering 2 pretty big topics. The first is going to be Joe Biden poll numbers, and the second is going to be U.S. relations with China. So let's get started with these poll numbers, which are not surprising, kind of surprising.
I mean, yes and no. First, let's back up a little bit and tell our viewers why we kind of look different today and we're not sitting next to each other.
So we are on Zoom today just to be safe.
Yeah. There's been some, coronavirus is crazy and restaurants are still opening. And so we are on the safe side, taking precautions, because although we both are very much germaphobes and we both very much put masks on, use gloves and that sort of thing, there is an inherited risk. And my family, some of my family members are part of the vulnerable population. So we made this decision until further notice, and hopefully our government will, take this into account and be a little bit smarter, which brings us to the poll numbers.
Poll numbers. So Joe Biden right now on a national average is leading by just over 9 points. So we are 99 days away from the general election, which is very exciting. I'm super pumped. But to see him coming in with a 10-point lead is hopeful. It kind of gives me hope. It also, I'm mixed with worry.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like we were whenever, the past election came around, in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, I honestly looked at Trump like, he's just whatever, he's just, it's just a joke. He's never going to win. And I saw Hillary leading in the polls and I was like, I didn't really like her. And I was like, more than likely she's going to win anyway, But that goes to show that we can never be so sure. And I think this has definitely put into perspective that sense of our democracy that, just because it has happened over and over again, right? Like a lot of people are like, oh, whatever, he's probably going to win. Or in 2018, they're like, Barack Obama is going to win. And people just sat back and kind of just expected it to happen.
Yeah.
It really put into test. Of course, there were some issues going on with the elections, but I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about the fact how we were so confident that Hillary was going to win. And now I hear a lot of people saying, well, if you're confident that Joe Biden is going to win, we already lost against Trump.
Yeah, because it leads to a sense of apathy, right? Like there's not the same sense of urgency, or at least I hope there's a sense of urgency. I hope that the vast majority of voters, and it's interesting to look at these numbers because he's also leading among independents.
Yeah. Which is crazy for me. Because in the beginning, independents are the ones that are typically like, I might or might not vote this election, and I feel like a lot of independents are coming out because they're tired of it. They're sick of it. And not only are they coming out, but they're coming out full force, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting where they land on the spectrum.
Yeah.
We're never given only 2 choices.
Yeah, I know. And it's going to be interesting to see because this election is going to be an absolute mess. So it's going to be interesting to see how those poll numbers are going to translate, not just because Joe Biden leading in the polls may lead to a sense of voter apathy. There's not that sense of urgency, but also how much more difficult is it going to be to cast your vote? I've been seeing stuff about how the post office has been telling people to give 14 days for their ballot to get to its destination. So then election day is technically November 3rd, It's in October.
Right.
And
It's crazy. I think I was looking at some numbers here a couple of days ago, and I think there was, I can't find it now, but I think it was like only 9,000 of registered Republicans have voted by mail in comparison of like 40,000 Democrats have voted by mail.
And that's why the
And
Republicans have tried so hard to stop it.
yeah, yeah. And that's what and like the question among my peers, around my colleagues at my work were like, is there something the Republican Party knows that we don't know? You know, and I was like, well, either one of the two things. Either they're planning on stealing our votes from mail, or they're scared that the Democrats are going to steal their votes and therefore they're not voting by mail, you know? So of course we're like, hopefully it's the latter, but it's kind of the numbers are pretty, and it's just here in North Carolina. These numbers that they pulled up was here in North Carolina, and they're pretty wild. Like it's in the tens of thousands of a difference.
Oh yeah. And I think that's kind of across the board. And I think that that's why we've seen this concerted effort rather from the Republican Party, especially the president himself, who votes by mail, to come out and be like, voting by mail just leads to fraud. And it's like, well, does it, or are you just afraid of it?
I think he's just afraid of the masses actually voting against him, because let's be honest, like our president started off his campaign as a joke, but he got a taste of the power that really came with it, which is what a lot of people were scared of that was going to happen. You know, they were scared that he was going to get a taste of this power and the actual power that he has as being president. And I'm sorry to say, but I'm really scared that he's not going to want to let it go.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, like we talked about last episode, the nature of bureaucracy is to keep itself going. So I think that there's enough of a mechanism behind him. And when I mean behind him, I don't mean in support. I mean structurally within the government, that if he were to really kind of attempt to thwart an election and stay in power, that would be dealt with rather swiftly. And I don't think that the military as a industrial complex or as an institution would really give him the time of day as far as like a military insurrection or him, you know, taking his control of the military to stay in power or something like that. But I mean, for us to be in 2020 in the United States of America having this conversation is
crazy,
eye-opening, to say the least.
Yeah, I found the numbers. So here it says 2016 regular Republicans that requested an absentee ballot by mail. In 2016 it was 6,736. And in 2020, these Republicans are 9,229. In 2016, only 6,868 Democrats requested an absentee ballot. In 2020, 46,856 requested an absentee ballot.
Yeah.
Listen to this. In 2016, registered unaffiliated voters requested only 4,546 requested an absentee ballot. In 2020, unaffiliated voters requested 30,912 absentee ballots. And that's just in North Carolina.
We can hope that's good news. You know, like seeing how Biden is leading among independents. He's, you know, obviously leading among Democratic voters.
Right.
And yeah, and just looking back at the polling, like Trump hasn't led in a poll since mid-February. And that was like a single Emerson poll. And then COVID hit.
And exactly. And so I think that goes hand in hand, you know, like regardless whether the Trump or the diehard Trump supporters want to see it, I mean, COVID has mattered, and it's mattered for a lot of people. And then you tag on a race relations, you know, you tag on the country's about to upend itself. you know, due to COVID, due to our race relations. I mean, we are in constant battle in the streets, you know, here in Durham, they're in Raleigh. I have colleagues that are in Raleigh, and they're constantly out on the streets, like outside the governor's mansion. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. So you create those two together and you have a perfect storm.
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, within the polling, they, you know, ask follow-up questions like, how do you feel Trump is doing on this? Or how do you feel Biden would differ on that? And the number two, the top two reasons for Biden leading the way that he is because of race relations and COVID-19. Those are the two main reasons, which goes against the traditional outlook on Americans, where the economy is the number one reason that they vote, right? They vote with their pocketbook. Yeah. We've heard that our entire lives. But now that's not, it's a priority, sure, because we have been so hit economically because of COVID. You know, so it's kind of falling under this umbrella of coronavirus and saying that we disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus, and we feel that Joe Biden would be better at handling it going forward, and the same with race relations. But is that any surprise to anybody that Trump polls poorly when it comes to race relations? He's as divisive as you can get.
Yep. I mean, he started his campaign saying that Mexicans are rapists and murderers, and his base stood behind him. He started his campaign telling to knock them out, will you, if they like are against, you know, issues that you might find, you know. He's just campaign at rallies that would mistreat Black Americans. So is it a surprise? Absolutely not. But am I happy that finally there are some people that voted for Trump that are saying never again? 100%. However, this begs the question, why didn't you see it first? Why didn't you see it before it got this bad? You know, why didn't you see his sexism, his racist comments before it got this bad? What makes it different? That's something that I would love to ask someone that was, you know, they're calling them a reformed Trump supporter. But I would
true.
But I would love to ask them, you know, what's different now? Like, why was it okay for Trump to get up on a stand in 2020, it seems so long ago, 2016, and speak these racist remarks, and everyone clapped for him like, yay, and now people are so appalled, like, oh my God, I cannot believe this president would say such things.
Yeah.
I cannot believe he didn't believe in the coronavirus. I cannot believe he's calling it the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus or whatever. What's the difference now? You know, is it because as an individual, you actually feel it and you didn't feel it then? Like,
I don't
what
think
is it now?
I think, and we see this in a lot of different aspects in life, right? A lot of people can feel a way, or an individual can feel a certain way, and they don't feel comfortable speaking out because nobody else is speaking out, right? So, and especially when it comes to Donald Trump, because if anybody speaks out against him, he will target them and try and destroy them. You know, look at Mitt Romney, you know, and so, and that's where I think groups like the Lincoln Project and Republican Voters Against Trump have now given these the 2016 Trump voters who no longer agree with him, both elected officials and citizens, because of things like the Lincoln Project and Republican Voters Against Trump, they now have a foundation to kind of stand on where they're not alone in rejecting the president. That's just my personal opinion.
And you know what, like, I hope that's not the case. And I hope that, I mean, I know that that's how, you know, heuristics and everything like that says that that's the case. You know what I mean? Like, if you, more than likely, if someone that you trust is going to vote a certain way, you will vote that way too, especially if you're not well educated or well versed in that particular race or in that particular, you know, scenario. But it really sucks because, like, you would think that in the United States of America, you would have a little bit more, I don't know, aren't we the ones that say, you know, grab yourself by your bootstraps type of thing? You know, you would think that you have a lot of better backbone to be like, you know what, this isn't right, and I'm gonna stand up for it.
Yeah,
But
you would think,
again,
but in all reality, we're kind of like a big high school where we have political cliques. You know what I mean? And like, God forbid you go against your clique, because then you're going to be ostracized and exiled.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
You know,
100%. And I see that even just here locally with the local congressional race going on in District 11. You know, like, I see it. If, God forbid, if one of the two candidates step away from their, you know, their parties or what their parties should be, oh my God, it's like, no, we cannot have that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, I think it's more evident in the supporters, right? Because I've seen on Mo Davis's campaign, like, I'm a Republican and I guess I'm voting for Mo Davis this election cycle. And then you go on and these same Republicans are like, I wish he was a Republican, like he's from the wrong party and this and that. And you go to the other side and you see the same thing happening on Madison Cawthorn's page. And it's crazy, right? It's crazy how I honestly think there's going to be a political party shift coming very, very soon.
I think that there's going to end up being a third party. Because
if there's not a shift, then yes, 100%.
Yeah, because we're seeing and I think it's going to happen on the left, because we're seeing a growing divide between your kind of more traditional liberal Democrats and your progressives, your Bernie-crats. And that is gonna, and it may be a good thing, because if you have progressives that are technically under the umbrella of the Democratic Party but don't feel welcomed within the Democratic Party, their policy platforms are rejected within the Democratic Party, then where else are they to go? You're only going to be able to guilt people into voting so much. And I think after Joe Biden, you're going to see a lot of progressive Democrats that have hit their guilt threshold. I mean, we're sucking it up to vote for Biden.
Exactly. And
like, it's 2016 was rough. 2020 is even rougher. But I think you're right. I think we're going to see a shift in not only partisan politics and the party structures, but the power dynamic.
Yeah, and I think it's going to definitely, and I think this is a good thing. I think the power's coming back to the people. For a long time, the United States was, I even remember when I was little, you know, my dad, I was always interested in politics and my dad always wanted to know more. And even when I was in high school, I remember discussing politics and it was kind of like an either or situation. There was never no way for you to make your own opinion or form your own opinion on what was going on. It was either you wanted them to be deported or not. And if you didn't, then you must fucking be an immigrant hugger or whatever the hell. You know what I mean?
Orders.
Yeah, exactly. It was either or. It was never like you can make your own opinion. And I think that now we have definitely seen that. We have definitely seen power to the people and and options. Hey, you know what? You don't like for-profit healthcare and you don't like Obamacare? Screw it. It's healthcare for all, you know, and that's where we stand, you know, and you don't like open borders, but you don't want people to get deported. all right, let's do a comprehensive, like
immigration
reform.
Yeah.
So we are definitely seeing a major shift away from the politicians back to the people.
Yeah.
Because the people finally have a say. The people finally have a voice, and it's about damn time.
Yeah. And we can thank that, I think, to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's allowed the unity of people across the nation, the unity of people across the world. Like, we are able to make connections and build power through digital means that is unheard of,
Mm-hmm.
And Obama really harnessed this in his 2012 campaign,
Right.
through his use of social media. And then you had things like Occupy Wall Street, which was like this massive shift. And through social media, people were like, dude, do you see Zuccotti Park? Like, do you see what's happening? Like,
yeah.
I remember I was living in West Virginia at the time, and I wanted so desperately to drive up and be in Zuccotti Park and like be part of Occupy, because that's where my values were and that's what I believed in. And that was all because of social media. Without social media, I would have never even heard of Occupy Wall Street.
Right. So many movements have gone unheard of because of it, because due to the lack of social media in the past. And now everything has become so readily accessible. I mean, take into consideration the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests. And I think, we're definitely going to see the I don't want to say trickle down effect, but the effect more than anything of the internet, of social media, if Joe Biden wins after his term, right? After his term is up, after the 4 years are up, we're going to see, is the United States actually ready? And like you said, we will no longer be guilted into voting for a person that we just have to vote because it's the worst of two evils.
The lesser of two evils. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Are we actually going to be done with that type of mindset? Because I think that that's the reason why a lot of people are pushing for Joe Biden. It's because they don't want Trump, right? We've heard it time and time and again. An issue it's something that I have such a bad issue with is vote blue no matter who, right? It's yep, right. So we've heard it time and time again this year, especially because the rhetoric behind it is anyone but Trump, right? So I'm really curious to see if Joe Biden gets elected 4 years later, who's going to run against him, if anyone's going to run against him. It would be really surprising to see if an incumbent would have a primary in
there's a 2024. Good possibility of it, and you and I have had discussions in the past, not only between ourselves, but between, party presidents and other elected officials regarding vote blue no matter who. And these same people will come out and say, well, young people vote based on their value, not their party. And it's like, okay, but we're still going to continue to push this vote blue no matter who narrative, which at its base level says, we don't care what your policy stances are. The only thing we care about is the letter next to your name. That's it. That's what vote blue no matter who is in a nutshell. We don't care what your policy is. As long as you're a Democrat, we're going to vote for you. And that goes in the face of where voters are headed, because voters are basing their vote more on value, more on policy than I think ever before. And so
100%.
That's where that diversion is, because you have an institution, the Democratic Party, who is pushing this vote blue no matter who narrative. And then on the flip side, you have young voters, which are going to be their largest voting bloc, saying, we look at your policy, you're not for Medicare for all, You're not for free public college. You're not for advancing this nation so we catch up with other developed nations. Why should we vote for you?
Yep.
I could give two shits what letter is next to your name.
Yep. And that's what I'm saying, you know, like, let's keep in mind, like, my topic of expertise is immigration, right? So this narrative of vote blue no matter who is very dangerous, because I'll tell you what, the president that locked in 11 million immigrants into the United States with IRA was Bill Clinton. He was a Democrat. The president, up until Trump, with the largest amount of deportations, was President Obama.
And I think Obama still beats Trump as far as deportation numbers.
So again, why is this so dangerous? Because Democrats really, to this point, to the immigrant community, haven't done anything for them. I mean, yes, President Obama did pass a massive bill, which was DACA, and prevented a lot of people from getting deported. But I don't think people realize that although he prevented it, it's not permanent. And so that's why the decision made from the Supreme Court a couple weeks ago that effectively said, you know, that guy is here to stay for now, because the president doesn't have any right, at least the reasons that he put up against DACA weren't the right reasons to stop DACA. So DACA for now is staying, right? But let's say, God forbid, but let's say he gets reelected. He could bring up suit again. And what happens if DACA gets eliminated? All of these people are now in immigration database that can be massively deported.
Yeah. And these are people that
at an instant
know the country that they came from.
Right. And at an instant.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because they trusted the government, and they put it, because the pros are more than the cons at that specific moment, right? You have a you have legality to be in the United States, right? You have a driver's license, you have a worker's permit. So the pros outweigh the cons. But if this program were to go away, they're out in the open. And they could be deported at any time. So what I'm trying to get at is that in reality, what has the Republican Party has not done absolutely anything for us, right? But what has the Democratic Party done then?
Well, and the fact that the
Democratic Party that's the
question, so much more.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the question we're asking ourselves. As a young Latina millennial, that's what we're asking ourselves. You had so many opportunities in the past to do so much more. Why didn't you?
Yeah.
You know, we're finally coming back, and the check is in our hands, and we're like, listen, this is the bill. What the hell are you going to do with it? You know what I mean? You've had all this time and power. What the hell are you going to do with it? And I don't think, I know. And I think that's where these liberal Democrats, these old liberal Democrats, don't understand where the disconnect is.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're coming in, cashing our checks, asking these questions, and they have no answers for us.
No, they want to avoid the question. You know what I mean? These aren't even topics that they actually want to discuss. Which, no, sorry. No. You're asking for us to give you power. Mm-hmm. Explain yourself. And exactly. If you can't come up with an explanation, then what are you going to do to fix it? What steps are going to be taken? What policy is going to be introduced? How are you going to pressure the candidates, not only the presidential candidates, the Senate candidates, the House of Representative candidates, the state candidates? How are you going to use your leverage as an institution to pressure these candidates into doing the right thing? And it's amazing to me how afraid parties are. And when I say parties, I mean like local county parties, and even the state party, like how afraid they are to honestly speak their mind about what their constituents want. You know, it's like, well, how do you expect to progress? How do you expect to become better if you don't call out the flaws that exist within your party and your candidates?
Yep. Yep. And I think that's where, again, I think that's what the older generation of Democrats don't understand. You know, we have been at multiple tables with different Democratic leaders in our local area, right? And they look at us like Bernie Kratz and they're like, oh no, like, ew, like,
It's because
no,
I
like
am a
they
Bernie.
can never. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they look at us, right? And they it's kind of like stay away, like,
Or
you
they
know,
laugh, and
and
it's like, do you understand how many of how many of us there are?
yeah, yeah.
And you
And
know,
exactly.
yeah.
And I think that's what they don't. I think they, you know, I've tried and we've tried. Oh, Lord knows we've tried to talk to them and we've tried to like reason with them and we've tried to say, if you are on a value, if you want to get young people, then you're going to value not only their opinions but their values. And they don't care about a candidate. They care about the values of the candidate. They don't care if the candidate, you know, has a mistress. They care that the candidate is preaching, you know, preaching Christianity and then has a mistress on the side. That's what they care about. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of issues that we have, that we have issues with. And I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I really don't know how else to explain that fact.
Well, I think it comes down to this traditional notion that only certain people belong in certain power spheres.
Right.
Right. So you look at somebody like AOC, who a lot of people can disagree with, but she has kind of
Stands up for her values.
well, and she's done her bit to kind of burst that bubble of, well, these people belong here because they are white people who have generational wealth, who have powerful families in the region or state that they were born and raised in. And that, I think, is the main notion that's shifting. And as it should, because we need more everyday people in the houses where our laws are created. And so I think that's one of the reasons that the younger voting demographic kind of butts heads with the older, more traditional liberal Democrats, in that we don't look at somebody's economic standing or their family history or tradition and say, well, we're going to automatically assume that they deserve to be at this level of power. It's like, no, you're asking us to invest in you, not only money through donations, time through phone banking and canvassing, but you want the most important thing that we have as an American, and that's the vote. So if you want us to invest our vote in you, what are we getting in return besides 4 or 8 more years of the same policies that have failed us over and over and over?
Right, right. And I think, you know, that's like an especially good point, because as young people, we don't care if you are, you know, if you're a multimillionaire. As a matter of fact, we're going to ask more questions if you're a millionaire.
Show us your
Yeah, as a matter of fact, yeah. Let me know what you've done with all that money. All right, I know you've been blessed, but let me know what you're doing with all that money. Why? Because I think what everyone believes is that Democrats say, or you know, the more traditional Democrats think that we want less taxes, and that is completely out of the fact. We don't mind paying a little bit more taxes if that means healthcare for all.
Yeah, if we're going to, well, again, what are we getting for what we're
Lord,
investing in?
exactly. Lord knows we already get taxed more than anyone. You know, Lord knows that as a woman that is in her late 20s, that doesn't have a child yet, right? And that is married to a person that basically is self-employed, we pay so many taxes because we have to.
Yeah.
But what are we getting? What are we getting in exchange? $200 a week if we like even apply for unemployment?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and that's it. Like you're not getting an investment in education for your children. You're not getting an investment in Social Security for when you retire. You're not getting forgiveness for your student loans, which are outrageous, and putting a generation of people into debt. You're getting an increased military budget.
Right.
And you're getting tax breaks for corporations. That's what you're getting. You know, so
for my hard-earned tax dollars.
And so to come back to the poll numbers, am I glad that Biden is beating Trump? Yeah. I am. I'm not going to lie. I would love to see Donald Trump lose just because it would be a blow to his ego. And that would make me feel so good. And as petty as that sounds, but in all honesty, I think that he's a dangerous person to have in a position of leadership. But the main thing is that, okay, we get Joe Biden into the White House, then what? We also have to flip the Senate. We also have to keep the majority in the House. And then we start pressuring him. That's the only-
And to what point are we going to pressure him whenever we no longer have a pandemic, whenever, you know, older traditional Democrats are telling us to stop with the race wars because Lord knows that it's bad for Joe Biden's image. So I think that the because we saw this with the sexual assault allegations, right? Like, my belief, and this is my personal belief, and I am sure that this is yours, if we want to have or hold someone accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable as well. So I don't want just to have an investigation on Donald Trump and his pedophilia, you know, ring. No. If there's allegations into Joe Biden about sexual allegations, I want that to be investigated as well. But in the
what?
Right? I mean,
hold on. You want accountability across the board?
That's crazy, right? And that's again the big disconnect between us young voters and traditional liberals, right? Because, oh God, we want to make the right seem so bad. We want to make them seem like they're devil incarnate, and they might very well be with Trump at the steering wheel, but we don't want to hold ourselves accountable through the same measures. And I'm not okay with that. I am not okay with that. No. So no, I don't care what people say. If Joe Biden gets elected, the race wars, the race relations, the race wars at the streets, us going out to the streets, demanding justice is not going to stop.
And
why? Because there is no legislation that has come out of it for it to stop yet.
Yeah. And it's going to shift. It's going to shift. And I think we're seeing that shift right now, where Black Lives Matter really fueled this engagement from normal, ordinary, everyday people that were not politically engaged. They wouldn't have considered themselves to be activists. They weren't out in the street marching during Occupy. But we've seen BLM now act as a springboard. And I think especially what we're seeing in places like Portland and Seattle is BLM is now morphing into a protest against oppression in general. And then by sending in federal troops as just another layer of oppression, you're just fueling the discord. You're fueling the, what's the word I'm looking for? The distrust that people have in the government right now. And so I think I don't think these protests are gonna go anywhere. I think that they will continue to build. And I think that we're gonna see the narrative really shift away from, well, not away from, I think it will always carry BLM with it, but it's going to become so much bigger than BLM, and BLM is just going to be the catalyst.
And you know what? I really hope that the people that are coming out that aren't typical activists are coming out for the right reasons. And that's because they're against oppression. They're against, you know, everything that has happened throughout these 400 plus years. But, and not just coming out because it makes Donald Trump and his supporters look bad.
I don't think so. I think people are genuinely angry. I think people are genuinely angry at the oppression that our Black community has faced. I think people are genuinely angry that millions of Americans have lost their health insurance through this pandemic, that we're seeing economic recessions every 10 years. And that's what I think is fueling this, is there's this national discontent. And BLM has brought that to the surface, and quarantine has given the people the free time to actually express their views, which I don't know if you remember one of our courses at UNCA with Dr. Hashka that spoke about the importance of free time and political engagement and how it changes regimes. But that's what I think we're seeing. I think we're seeing people have more free time on their hands to understand what's going on and to actually kind of rise up and do something about it. And they're getting that courage to rise up from BLM.
So what I'm hearing is people were personally, now they feel personally affected now. You know, finally it's come to the point that they are personally affected by all the issues that the minority populations have been affected for years and years and years.
Exactly.
Now everyone is affected, and therefore it's everyone's fight,
which
is great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, well, shit, you know, like, I know for a fact, for my family at least, and I know probably for yours, health insurance was always like a luxury. We've never really had stable health insurance.
I always had health insurance growing up. My mom worked for the government. So I never knew what it was like to not be able to go to the doctor until I was an adult. And when I became an adult, the ACA wasn't really a thing. So my coverage under my parents was cut off, like my sophomore year of college or something like that. When I stepped away from my first round of college, no health insurance for Jenny. So that's when I got a personal understanding of what it's been like to not have health insurance, because I grew up with the luxury of I didn't have to worry about going to the doctor. If I was sick, I went. If I needed a prescription, I got it filled. If I needed a surgery, we got it scheduled and it happened. And then since then, my personal health care coverage has been sporadic. And it's simply because I can't afford it.
And see, and that's the thing, like, a lot of people fall in your situation now where they're finally feeling the effects of the economic oppression that has been happening in the United States for decades. But it has never really affected the majority of the population.
No, because we had a strong middle class, which we don't have anymore.
No. my parents were always self-employed since I can remember, because that's the American dream in the Mexican, you know, culture, to have your own, you know, little business or whatever. So therefore we never had, and we never had health insurance. And whenever my parents fell on tough economic times after the 2008 recession, I remember my mom finally walking into the Medicaid office with us, and she was so nervous, and she was like, had so much like, she was so, not only was she shy, but it felt literally, I was a little girl, and I felt like we were taking away from the government. Like, we didn't deserve this. Like, oh my God, like, who's gonna think, and for the first time in about, goodness, my whole entire like childhood, we were able to schedule a dentist appointment.
That's crazy.
And it was crazy, you know? So that's what I hear now that you're saying. And it's kind of funny that you say it, because I was always on the opposite end. And I figured that everyone was living like that, like how I was.
And I thought everybody was living like me. Like, what do you mean?
So
I go to the dentist?
Right?
You know?
So I definitely feel like you're completely right. This pandemic, these racial relations that have been going on is like a perfect storm that BLM created, because finally we are all feeling the same thing, regardless of our skin. I don't want to say the same exact thing, but we're feeling the same thing regardless of our skin color.
Yeah.
We are all going, yes, you know, us minority populations, we have suffered it for more time, and we have suffered it more deeply. But now we also see white Americans joining us, because they're like, shit, I finally understand you. You know, for the first time in my whole entire life, I have to get unemployment. And yeah.
And I think that what happened to George Floyd will go down in the history books as inadvertently uniting the American people.
Yep.
And I think that's why we're seeing the federal response that we're seeing, because I think they understand this too. It's bigger than Black Lives Matter. And
100%.
But it is so crucial that Black Lives Matter is at the center of this movement, and is the spark that lit this fire in the people. And that has to always be honored, right? Because without their struggle, we wouldn't be experiencing the unity that we're experiencing now. And we owe a great debt to the, I don't want to come off and saying this wrong, but we owe a great debt to the Black community and their ability to unify behind a cause and welcome white and brown brothers and sisters. And then, just as Martin Luther King did, realize that this is about color, it's also about class. And that's the one thing, that's the string that really kind of unites us all. And so, you know, and it's fitting that, again, this is happening when, you know, John Lewis passes away, somebody that marched with MLK, that fought with MLK, that was arrested and beaten for civil rights. And then went his entire life fighting to represent the people of his district and his state, and really the nation in general. But it's so fitting that this is all coming back together into the same kind of package that we saw it come together in the 60s, where it started as a race thing and it ended up being like, no, this goes beyond someone's skin color.
Right. And not to say that we should become colorblind, right? Not to say that.
And that's
we
why
should be
like, BLM needs to be honored in their
right
their spark,
because they have
fire.
We have to remember that the Black and brown community comes with hundreds of years of resilience, right? They didn't just say, oh man, this shit's too hard, like I'm just gonna sit down and just wait for it to change. You know what I mean? They didn't say, oh, I'm just going to wait for there to be another president and see if he's any better than the last. No, they said, no. This is changing because this is changing. Yeah. All right, we've had enough.
Yeah.
This is it. Like, we've had enough. You know, one is one too many. I am sick of your shit. I am done with it because I don't want to be next. Period. And you don't need any more explanation than that.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's,
you know, and for that,
that's where the unity comes in. Among
right. And exactly. And for that, we must respect them. For that, we must, like you said, we must honor them, and we must honor their sacrifice as well. Right? Because this wouldn't have happened, and it's sad to say this wouldn't have happened without sacrifice. This wouldn't have happened without bloodshed. This wouldn't have happened. Nobody would have acknowledged it without it, you know? And I think Candace Owens said at one point, oh, George Floyd shouldn't be honored like a martyr or stuff like that because he wasn't the great man that he should be. I'm sorry, but since when does a thought of someone forging a dollar bill a reason to die, a death sentence?
Well, and also, you know? I think that by her calling him a martyr, it undermines his death, right? Because a martyr is someone who dies voluntarily for a cause, and George Floyd's life was stripped from him.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so I think also remembering the tragedy that got us here, you know, it's just so heavy. And to see a nation really coming together to carry that and to carry the cause forward and to break down the racial barriers and to acknowledge each other's struggles and to stand together and say that we will not tolerate oppression any longer. And I think economic oppression is part of that. I think, you know, social oppression is part of that. Police violence is part of that. So yeah, it's really interesting to see everybody coming together behind this. And it's going to be interesting to see when November comes.
I think I'm more interested to see, and I said this at the beginning of the episode, I think I'm more interested to see the 4 years after Joe Biden.
I'm interested to see months after Joe Biden, because I don't think that these marches are going to stop, and kicking out Trump will not stop them, right? The election of Joe Biden will not stop them. So how is he going to handle these? Because I have a feeling that he's going to handle them very similarly to Donald Trump.
Yeah. I think that he's going to, probably not as bad as Donald Trump, but I think he's going to be on that line where he wants to show his force as the president of the United States, and he wants everyone to see that. And I would be really surprised if actual legislation would happen out of all this, which is crazy for me because, like, all right, why can't we just have a consensus? You know, nobody should die at the hands of a police officer, right? And if someone does, there has to be an extensive investigation from a third party that is not affiliated with the police agency. And yeah, why can't we make that a law?
Well, and the funny thing is, and that kind of happened in Asheville, right? So we saw the APD, it made national news. They destroyed the medics tent. They were stabbing bottles of water with a knife. They tear gassed all the medical supplies and food that the medics had, you know, donated to them. And the chief of police came out and gave a non-apology apology. And then they hired an independent investigator to come in and, you know, see what took place. And of course, again, thank you, internet. We were able to Google this company. And they are a public relations firm that specializes in social media and reputation management for law enforcement. This is not a third-party independent agency. This is a PR firm. And people caught on to it real quick. And the city had to respond real quick because, again, where's the...
But again, it's... Exactly. And again, it's after something happens. Why can't we be proactive instead of reactive? And that's my question, right? To all legislators out there, if you guys are listening, why is it that if there's a demonstration outside of your office, right, you don't just get to work real quick? Why don't you just get to work and say, hey, we have to do something. You see these people, they're upset. All right. And these are the people that I represent. So we're obviously doing something wrong. Yeah, we're obviously doing something wrong, or something is wrong. Yeah. We need to get working. What can we do?
Open a channel of communication.
Right.
There's such a separation between elected officials and police departments and the people of their cities and states and country. Like, there's such a disconnect. And again, it comes back to, you want our vote. You want us to invest in you. You want us to give you power. But as soon as we give you that power, you act like we don't exist.
Right. And
there's a problem there.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like, and this is something that we hold very personal, right? Because we've been on both sides of the aisle. We've been on the electorate side and we've been on the candidate side. And I know 100% that you have to try your best as one person to represent your whole district or your whole area. I get it. And I get that there's people with very different views and sometimes polar opposite views in your district. I get it. And there has to be a way to come in between and be able to represent both views to the best of your ability. But if you are elected, right, I would at least expect you to come out and say, these are the people that I represent, because there's people that vote against you. At least in our election, we got 33% of the vote. Those 33% of the people, I know that I owe my credibility to, right? I owe who I am to them, right? I owe them accountability over me and my job, because they're the ones that put me in the position that I'm in, right? So why is it that hard for our legislators to understand that? Like, if you won 70% of the vote, right? 70% of you owe your accountability and your job to 70% of the voters.
Oh, I disagree with you there. I disagree. You owe it to 100% of the voters.
Right, right. But let's just say we're talking conservatively here, right? And let's just say we're being egotistical.
When you're an elected official, who voted for you doesn't matter, right? It's your obligation to represent all of the people of your district. And I think that's why they don't have channels of communication, because it's difficult. And instead of bringing people from different sides of the aisle, one who voted for you and one who didn't vote for you, but have the same problems, bring them to your table and find a compromise.
100%.
That's the way that work.
That's the way we do it, right? And I think we did it over the whole entirety of the campaign. We did it, and we brought even Republicans to your bar, right? Remember that couple that was like diehard Republican, like, and we're like, what the hell? What's the issue here? And it came out that they have the same issues as all of us. You know, the only reason that he's getting paid $20 an hour is because he's in a unionized job. that collectively bargained and got them $20 an hour, you know, and you talk to them and you get down realistically. You stop talking the political jargon and you get down realistically and you say, is it fair for you to work 40 hours a week and not have access to healthcare?
Yeah.
Is it fair for you to work 40 hours a week and not being able to, you know, maintain your household?
And it came down to a conversation. That's all. It came down to a simple conversation. And right. it wasn't, but
and how hard is it to have that simple conversation with, I know it's not easy. I get it. I know it's not easy, but it comes back to being intentional about your position.
Yes.
If you're not intentional about actually being a congressman, congresswoman, House of Representatives, state representative, governor, whatever the hell, if you're not intentional, why are you running?
Power.
I'm sick and tired of every
problem.
And that is the problem. And that's where I was going. I'm sick and tired of everyone running just to get their name on a paper and just to look nice in front of a camera. I hate it. I can't stand it because you aren't being intentional.
No.
Like, you know, I hate to bombard Madison Cawthorn, but it seems like that's all he's doing. I mean, if you go back on his Instagram page, you know, before he was going to run, he went on different mission trips and he became a volunteer for this organization and for that and blah, blah, blah. You could tell that they were grooming him to become a congressman. And now he comes up and he's this congressman with just some empty, I was going to say stupid, but they're not really stupid. They're empty talking points. They're just, they're not full of any substance. So whenever you ask them exactly political and about policy issues, they're empty.
Yeah.
Why? Because he's not intentional. He doesn't care about his actual community. You know what's going to happen if he gets elected? I know you know what's going to happen. He's going to get up there and he's going to say, okay, well, I'll do whatever the party wants.
Oh, 100%.
And then I'll just go and explain it to them however it is.
It's not going to matter what his constituents want. You know, and I think we see that across the spectrum. Mm-hmm, we see, again, candidates asking for voters to give them power and then abandoning the people that have put them in that position. And I think that's what's going to change. I think that's the shift that we're going to see. And we'll see what kind of accountability a Joe Biden administration has. I mean, the one good thing that he's done, and I say good in a very political sense, is that he hasn't really made any promises. There's no policy change. There's no message of hope, and there's none of that.
It's very matter-of-factly. Right. And you know, the one sit down round table discussion, not round table, but with the one sit down discussion that I saw was this commercial that was airing on Facebook through with President Barack Obama. And they were saying it seemed like a very matter-of-fact conversation, you know, basically saying, hey, if this were to have happened within our administration, we would have never said, oh, it's not our fault. We would have taken ownership and said, this has to change, you know? Maybe. But, you know, but that conversation, it's like a breath of fresh air because, you know, Barack Obama asked him, you know, what is your plan? There's so many people that are losing their small businesses. There's so many people that don't have a job. There's so many people that are barely making ends meet. What is your plan for everything? And Joe Biden put a layout plan. You know, we have to take care of these people. We have to do this and whatever. And it seemed pretty well thought out, which is a breath of fresh air compared to, oh, they just have to work harder.
Yeah.
You know, with the
What was that
and
latest
I think
campaign from the White House? Find a new job.
yes. Oh my no, get into a new thing or do a new
Find
thing.
new.
Find something new. Oh my gosh. I was
Great
like,
idea,
yeah.
lady. Maybe I
In
can
the
make
toughest,
for you.
right. In the toughest economic crisis that we have had to date. And you want me to find something new, child?
Oh, wait, I can't make purses from you. Your purses are made in China.
Oh, right. They're outsourced.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which brings us to the next topic.
The next topic, which is concerning, but what isn't concerning nowadays. So US-China relations have reached kind of an all-time high here. We are seeing consulates shut down in both countries. The Chinese consulate in Houston was forced to shutter. China retaliated and shut down the US consulate, one of the US consulates in China. Our government, Mike Pompeo, came out and said that the reason that we shuttered the consulate in Houston was because they were stealing trade secrets, which is not something that is uncommon for the Chinese government to be known to do. There have been battles for decades now with them stealing the likes of, intellectual property of Apple and Samsung and just all kinds of global brands. It was interesting, however, that when they told the consulate that it would be shuttered, that they started to burn documents. And then there was recently a Chinese man who was arrested for, under the Espionage Act, he was giving state secrets to the Chinese government. Yeah. He actually ran a political consulting firm, which is terrifying to think, because you're working with elected officials and departments and candidates, and you've got an insane amount of access to this kind of information. And all the backroom talks. When you're a political consultant or a political operative, you're in the back room. You're having these discussions about policy and where it's going to lead and trade agreements. And he was shifting that.
Confidential.
Yeah. And he was shifting that over to the Chinese government. And he was arrested. He did it for, I think it was 4 years. That they know he was shifting government secrets to the Chinese government. So what's to make of this? Is this politically motivated by the Trump administration to distract us from his tanking poll numbers? Or is this out of legitimate concern for, American corporations and national security?
I don't think we can ever actually know. I mean, I feel like the job of the president, it's so hard, and you literally learn on the job, right? There's no manual that says this is how to be a president, right? But Donald Trump has definitely showed us how not to be a president.
That's the truth. Yeah.
So, with that being said, exactly. Whatever you do, just don't do what Donald Trump did. Do the exact opposite. With that being said, though, I think this man is a con man. This man is a con artist. So I wouldn't have passed it by him for it to do for this shutting down to be politically motivated, and him trying to see if this is going to help his poll numbers or his reelection. I wouldn't pass it by him. I can already see him doing that.
Yeah.
However, China is one of those countries that has so much power over us, but at the same time, we kind of do too, right? And it's one of those countries where you can't just shut out, like Cuba, for example. You can't just do that with China. You can't just like put it in the back burner and forget about it type of thing, you know? I honestly don't know. I don't know how we're gonna go, how the coronavirus and its beginnings the coronavirus beginning in China has definitely created a very I can never say that word.
Tumultuous.
Yeah. Relationship with them. Because you I mean, if it was already bad to begin with, you know, it was already strained to begin with. And now we have the coronavirus that started there, right? And now we have this person that was actively giving trade secrets to China. And now we have this consulate closing. And now we have the other consulate closing in China. Like, where does it end? Is there an ending for it?
Well, and that's
I
one
don't know
thing
if I have that.
that I was reading in the reports is like, this keeps ramping up and escalating. And, you know, out of one side of his mouth, Trump will say that we need better trade relations with China, and he's buddying
Right.
up to Xi Jinping. And then out of the other side of his mouth, he talks about how China has destroyed our economy and they've taken all of our jobs. And it's like, so with this escalating, with these tensions escalating, like, what's the breaking point? I mean, and one of the reports that I was reading talked about the possibility of a physical confrontation. Like, at what point do we get past economic sanctions and tit for tat as far as closing consulates and embassies? Like, at what point does that tension break and there's a physical confrontation? And I think that's something that, you know, we should take into consideration, because I think when you have somebody like Donald Trump, who is desperate to stay in power, will kind of do anything to, you know, cling on to his power that he quickly sees slipping away from him with these poll numbers. And then we have somebody like China who, you know, has a short fuse, but economically we're so dependent on each other. We're dependent on China for product, but China is dependent on us for our consumerism. So it's a two-way street there. And if those Mack trucks are coming at each other, at some point there's going to be a collision.
And that's a scary thing to think about, right? Because like, just like China has a short fuse, Donald Trump has even a shorter one because of his ego. And we saw earlier, you know, last year, about the assassination of the general. You know, he doesn't think twice about doing something at that grand scale. And I know for a couple of days, the world held their breath and was like, is this the beginning of World War III? Because that's how World War II started.
Well, and recently they actually put out an arrest warrant for Donald Trump.
Oh my God. Like, our president has an arrest warrant. Jesus. Like, can it get any worse than
You know, but you're right. Like, it could take one wrong move. Right. One wrong move. And then we've got China involved. We've got North Korea involved. Russia would probably be involved. Like, it would be a mess.
Disastrous. It would be disastrous. And it would be everyone gunning for everyone, and nobody is safe at that point. You know, where do we go? And do we have a safe leadership under Donald Trump? And I don't think so. I think that Donald Trump,
oh my God,
Donald Trump at the head of a world war, we would have the war in our backyards. Like, it would be right here. And he would probably be in his bunker hiding.
I mean, could you really imagine that though? Like, I mean, he already claims to be a wartime president because of coronavirus, which, get off it. But could you imagine him actually being a wartime president and how disastrous that would be?
Oh my God. It wouldn't even be disastrous. I don't think there's a word that has been, it would, it would be dangerous. It would be the world. It would be the apocalypse.
It would be damn close. Yeah. Real damn close.
Like, that's it. Like,
yeah, no, please, no, let's not go there.
God, no, please not. No, let's not go there. No, because that would, that would be like my worst nightmares fulfilled. I mean, I don't know, with it, to say anything, if we're wrapping this up, if the poll numbers say anything, and if China says anything, is that I'm pretty freaking happy that Joe Biden is leading. Will I be happy in 4 years if Joe Biden is leading against an incumbent like against a challenger like Bernie Sanders? Probably not, but for now, right now, I'm really happy that he's leading, and I feel hopeful for the future. Now, with that being said, we can't act like it's already won, because we still have to go out and vote. That's the number one. If we don't go out and vote, the poll numbers mean nothing.
And more important than the president is the Senate.
So go out and vote for Cal Cummings.
Talk about that. If you don't want to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, that's on you. But please vote in the Senate races, please.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
Right now, the only reason that Donald Trump has the leverage that he has is because of people like Mitch McConnell and the fact that the Republicans control the Senate. And not only that, but if we do get a Joe Biden, a Joe Biden administration and the Democrats in the House and the Senate, we have the majority, then we will have leverage to push Joe Biden on the issues that he needs pushed on. And there'll be
no excuse.
And he'll also have the support on issues that he needs the support on. There won't be, a fear of, okay, well, we've gotten a bill through the House, and if we can just get it to Joe Biden's desk, then it'll be good to go. But it's got to get through Mitch McConnell's Senate. So
and that's where. Yep. And because that's where our HEROES Act is at, right? It's still in the Senate.
And it'll stay in the Senate until it's so watered down that it's useless.
Yeah. So, that's why, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. If you don't care about the presidential race, goodness gracious, where have you been? Under a rock?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not advocating for people to not vote for president. Please.
No. Please do. But let's just say, if you don't care about the presidential race, please, for the love of God, like, the people that create our legislation is the House of Representatives and the Senate, and the reason that we see so many things happening is, like you said, Donald Trump might be an empty shell, but he has pretty powerful people behind him that know exactly what they're doing. And 100%. One of those people is Mitch McConnell, Tom Tillis, Mark Meadows, but he's no longer running for that seat. But still, he has this little proxy right there that looks at him like.
that was a great face. That's great.
Like, that's literally how he was looking at them. Like, oh my God, I've been waiting for him my whole life. So, right. So he has this little proxy going in. So for goodness sakes, please look at these races, and more importantly, look at these local races as well, because North Carolina is really, really lucky that we are like surrounded by horrible governors and leadership, like Kentucky is Mitch McConnell.
Let's be honest. I think we're
no.
Even amongst Republicans and independents, I think he's going to do stellar.
100%.
But yeah, and also if we take the Senate, if we take the majority in the Senate, we can override Trump's vetoes. So there's so many mechanisms of leverage here that are vitally important. And like we said last episode, voting is our mechanism of accountability.
Right. And we got to hold these people accountable. Like, we have to get out and vote. Like, if we never went out and voted any other election, this is the election to do so.
Do it, yes.
So
this is the election. Show out. If you need information on getting a mail-in ballot, I'll post some links in the description of the YouTube video. And probably on the podcast channels as well, on Podbean and Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. I'll try and get some information out there as to how you can register to vote and how you can get a absentee ballot. There have been numerous states that have passed no excuse bills to where now you don't need an excuse to vote absentee. And they've also gotten rid of the number of witnesses that you need. If I'm correct on that, they've lowered the amount of witnesses that you need to vote absentee.
And vote.org is a great place. It has like a one-stop shop for everything. It literally has register to vote, request your absentee ballot, check your status of your registration, check your status of your ballot. It has all of those great tools. So we'll post that link below.
Yeah, that'll be down in the description for sure. Yeah.
So
all right, guys.
Go out and vote.
Yes, go out and vote.
And don't forget. Yes.
And yeah, we're going to wrap it up this week. Thanks for tuning in, and like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. You can find us on Facebook at Exit Poll Left, and we're also on Twitter, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
All right. And if you guys want us to talk about anything, drop it down in the comments below.
Sure. You know, comments, questions, concerns, we're open to all of them.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.